Tel Aviv right now. You can see on his feet is Eylon Levy, Israeli government spokesman, giving an update. Let's have a listen in.
Farhat was responsible for the killing of 6 IDF soldiers during Operation Protective Edge in 2014 and sent Hamas Nukba terrorists into kibbutz Nahal Oz and the Nahal Oz IDF post on October 7th, bearing direct responsibility for the atrocities there. He was also one of the masterminds of the Mechinat Atzmona 2002 attack, killing 5 Israeli civilians, and the anti-tank missile terror attack on a civilian bus in Nahal Oz in 2011, killing an Israeli child. Taking out that terrorist there, a reminder of the enduring threat that Hamas has posed to the people of Israel, not only on and since October 7th, but in the 16 preceding years of its reign of terror inside the Gaza Strip. An update from the northern border. Today, an anti-tank missile was launched towards an IDF vehicle in the area of Beit Hillel. Several IDF soldiers sustained light injuries as a result of the shrapnel, and the vehicle was damaged. In addition, several launches in the area of Mount Dov and Iftah were identified, some of which fell inside Lebanese territory. IDF artillery has been striking the sources of the fire. That brings us to the end of today's update, and we'll now take your questions. Thank you.
So there you go. That is the Israeli government spokesman, Eylon Levy, just updating journalists there. Well, all this comes as the US Defence Secretary, Israel's continuing bombardment of southern Gaza, the US Defence Secretary urging Israel to do more to protect civilians as they go after Hamas. Lloyd Austin saying the protection of Palestinian civilians in Gaza was both a moral responsibility and a strategic imperative. Let us go, shall we, to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who is live for us in Jerusalem. A growing number of countries calling for some kind of restraint from Israel and to urging caution. Is Israel listening, though?
I think there are some signs that they're listening, because they put in place this grid over Gaza. They've divided it into tiny, tiny little grid sections in order to advise, warn citizens living in those little areas to leave as and when they're going to conduct military operations in those specific places. But I think the reality on the ground is different, because there is a widespread bombing campaign again going on in northern Gaza, but also shifting down south towards Khan Yunis. And the Israelis are wanting to get on with the fight. I think there might be concern in the war cabinet as to how long they've got left. They want to see this war. They believe that to achieve their objectives, they probably need to be fighting for another few more months. But the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who met with the war cabinet in Tel Aviv last week, said you probably just don't have the credit for that, meaning that maybe they've only got a matter of weeks to try and achieve their objectives. And so on the one hand, you've got Israel fighting very, very hard to find senior Hamas leadership, to eliminate Hamas military capabilities, but on the other hand, you've got a civilian population in Gaza that is now densely packed, largely in the south, and all too often are the ones suffering the most for it. The civilian death count is rising quite rapidly again after the truce finished, and so it would be that concern, and there's the broader humanitarian crisis of a lack of food and water, etc. It will be that is really concerning the Americans in particular, and they've been very vocal about it publicly, so you can only guess probably what they're saying behind the scenes.
All right, Ali, thanks for now. Alistair Bunkle, live in Jerusalem. We'll hear from our military analyst, Sean Bell, in a moment. First, I want to take you back to Eylon Levy, the Israeli government spokesman in Tel Aviv, answering some questions.
Within civilian areas, and we're going to continue making efforts to get civilians out of harm's way from areas where Hamas is trying to hide behind them, because there will be nowhere to hide for the Hamas terrorists who perpetrated the October 7th massacre and have ever since been promising to perpetrate repeat atrocities against our people. Those are legitimate military targets, and we will do everything we can to get civilians out of harm's way so that we can reach those targets.
Question from Hannah Julian. When tunnel shafts are destroyed during operations, what happens with the tunnels themselves and the other shafts along the route?
The IDF has been employing a range of engineering means to destroy the tunnel shaft. Obviously, each case is different, and I can't comment on the tactics that the IDF has been taking to destroy all of the shafts. But if you're interested in more information, the IDF has discussed that in previous press releases, and I'm sure you can contact the IDF spokesperson's unit. By the way, for anyone listening on this call, for any further questions you have about operational matters.
A question from Sami Tissa, Bernie News Network. What is the reaction of international representatives about the ceasefire violation by Hamas? We know US Secretary of State Blinken was here, so did he have a comment? And secondly, since we are now in a new phase of conflict, what lessons learned from before the ceasefire will be used now from both a military perspective and a PR one?
Any questions you have about international reactions, I would advise you to speak to the persons whose reactions you are seeking. I speak here for the Israeli government. I can tell you what our reactions are to the violation of the ceasefire, which is that when Hamas decided to start firing rockets at Israel and not release women and children as obligated, it resumed hostilities, and therefore we resumed our campaign in order to put pressure to bring back the hostages and ultimately lead to the end of Hamas, and that campaign is going to continue until we get all the hostages home and until total victory.
Question from Shoshana Solomon.
Eylon Levy.